Morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Rich Clark, and I've been a hypnotherapist for the last 8 years, and I've been a holistic therapist for the last 14 years. So for Wellness Wednesday, I'm going to talk about a subject of meditation. Now, meditation varies across many different cultures, but the actual origins of meditation documented is from the Vedic culture. But anyway, to understand what meditation is a practice in which an individual uses the technique to train attention and awareness and detach from reflexive, discursive thinking, achieving a mentally clear and emotional and calm, stable state, while not judging the meditation process itself. Now, techniques are broadly classified into focused or concentrative and open monitoring methods. Focused methods involve attention to specific objects like breath, which is what in the Indian culture we call prana. So pranayama is actually breath work, which also is part of meditation, or mantras. Now, mantras are also a thing people use while they are working. So the idea is, if you are doing a mantra, and like you've got here is 108 beads, once you're counting the beads, you do 108 times whatever that mantra is. They reckon when you do that, that puts you in the full meditative state. Now, the other thing is as well with most meditation is there's usually poses. But in Indian culture, we use a thing called mudras. So we have different things where we use our fingers and do different things. So if this is for like helping with this planet and so forth, helping with this, putting them in different positions. So meditation is practiced in numerous religions. The earliest records of meditation, dhyana, were found in the Vipassana, which is a Indian text, which is these are late Vedic and post-Vedic Sanskrit texts. Now, that's the earliest records of them. However, there is records which are earlier, which have been passed down, but weren't written down. They were passed down generation to generation, because the Vedic culture is older than 5,000 years old. But most people know is the newest version of the Sanskrit texts, which are about 2,500 years old. But they actually date even further back. Meditation also plays a salient role in other parts of Jainism, which again is a subset from the Vedic culture, Buddhism, which also comes from the Vedic culture, and Hinduism, which is where the old system of Vedic culture goes into Hinduism. So Hinduism actually and Vedic culture are actually very interlinked. Buddha was actually a Brahmin from the Vedic culture. So when people talk about Buddhism being old in China, it originates from India, and it was made to be simplified Vedic studies, which were then put into Taoism in China. Shinto Buddhism is an example of that too. So meditation techniques are also known in Judaism, Christianity and Islam as well. Now, this is quite an interesting one, because most people see meditation, which is used in these religions, they say meditation is a form of yoga, which is a form of devilment in a lot of new Christianity or new reborn Christians, which is not true. Meditation actually was done by Christians in temples. It was done by Jews as well, part of the Kabbalah, and then also in Islam they have done forms of meditation. So it does exist in different forms. It's just for some reason there seems to be this thing that meditation is only from the mystic East. That's what they used to call it anyway. So the idea of meditation, the English-derived word of meditation, is from the Old French meditation, in turn from Latin mediation, from a verb meditare, which is meaning to think, contemplate, devise, ponder. It's interesting when they say to think, because actually meditation is to not think. So that's a kind of interesting way they use that. In the Catholic tradition, the use of meditation is as part of a formal stepwise process of meditation goes back to at least the 12th century monk, and before which the Greek word fiora was used for the same purpose. So again, meditation was used quite a lot. Yeah? In some respects, prayer is a form of meditation. You know, you're pointing your hands to a certain way. If you think about it, when you do it in the Indian way, or a Buddhist, you put your hands there or wherever, on the solar plexus or the manipura. But that's exactly the same as prayer, but prayer goes, which actually is supposed to align with your third eye. It's very much interlinked. This is why most religions are interconnected some way down the line. So anyway, most historical usage was introduced as a translation for Eastern spiritual practice, referred as dhyana in Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism, which come from the Sanskrit root dhya, which means to contemplate or meditate. And then also Sufism, Kabbalism, which I explained earlier. So Difficulties in defining meditation. No universal accepted definition for meditation has been associated. It's the popular usage of that, and then that's how they use it. So then now sometimes there is no definition necessary and sufficient criteria for meditation that has achieved widespread acceptance with the modern scientific community. Now, some science studies have done meditation and they have shown that this stuff helps with calming the body down. They've actually seen how it works with the nervous system, the blood, and so forth. So they actually prove, where Reiki hasn't been proved to work scientifically, but they actually have proved meditation works. The separation of technique from tradition, this is where the cause of meditation has happened a lot. So some difficulties in precise meditation has been recognised particularities of many various traditions. Most people say, such as faith as Hindu or Buddhist schools, and individuals may teach distinct types of meditation. So every meditation for different things are done. That's why they have certain mantras. So they'll have like a mantra for Ganesh or Krishna to remove blockages, or you use Gayatri for removing bad luck, or you use Lakshmi, which you use to create wealth. So there's all these different ideas of it. And then every school has a different idea. So the other idea we can look at is the different types of idea of this. The Buddhist tradition divides meditation practice into samatha, which is samatha is the serenity, tranquility, or awareness. And then vipassana, you may have heard, vipassana is also something where people go for 30 days and they sit in silence for 30 days, and then they're only allowed to do is eat. They're not allowed to talk on phones, nothing like that. That's actually quite a difficult thing for people to do. I've done it, it's not easy. It's actually really weird, because after the 30 days you don't talk to anybody, and you actually really struggle because you've not been using your voice for so long. The mindfulness of breathing, a form of focused attention. So people do that where they focus on candlelight. So we've got candlelight here. For example, when I'm talking, even when I'm doing talks or anything like that, I'm also usually burn incense. I've got Palo Santo, or I've got frankincense and myrrh. I burn that stuff to ground me and to do that. It also does heat my body up as well, so that's why meditation is to cool the body down. And that's done by pranayama. Now, pranayama is breathing. We call it breath work, but actually breath work is pranayama. So when people say, oh, pranayama doesn't work and yoga techniques don't work, all breath work, modern day breath work, is taken from pranayama, which is from the Vedic culture. So again, another issue. And I will be doing a talk about breath work specifically, or specifically, either way. The other way as well is technique, is the posture. So asanas or body postures such as padmasana, which is full lotus, half lotus, cross-legged sitting, called seiza, and kneeling positions are popular meditative positions in Hinduism. So, for example, right, the way is 3 different ways of doing meditation. They can do it full lotus, half lotus, seiza, which is cross-legged sitting, which is mainly people do, but then also people do kneeling. Now, kneeling, sometimes they also recommend certain things. When you're pregnant, you don't do certain meditations as well. So within this, meditation is also sometimes done while walking, known as kinhin. So when someone actually is meditating while they're walking, they actually can be in a form of meditative state. While doing a simple task mindfully, known as samu, or while lying down in shavasana. So if you lie down, you can actually do a form of meditation called shavasana. So when people say you have to cross your legs, it's not true. The actual way, there's some main positions. So like I said, I'll repeat them again. Padmasana, which is this full lotus or half lotus, cross-legged sitting, which is seiza, and kneeling positions. Then you have walking, which is kinhin, and then we also have samu, which is lying down, as known as shavasana. Right, so these are the different ones you can do. Transcendental meditation technique requires practice of 20 minutes twice per day. This is more a Buddhist technique. And this, the research shows improvement in meditation time with simple oral and video training. They reckon that some of this can be achieved with a practice of only 8 minutes a day. Again, people sometimes want to meditate more. Some meditators find practice best in the hours before dawn. There's also other reasons we're taught also to do exercises as well as meditation, is we're taught that our lungs are at full capacity at 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning. So that's another way you can do it. Though I would say, so sometimes if you've been out, so a night out drinking or whatever, or doing a lot of stuff, when you come back, actually do meditation for 20 minutes. It actually does help you. It does help clear the lungs. It can help to reset the body. And you actually can do meditation, like we just said about walking. You can actually do it when you're actually showering. Meditate in the shower and cleanse the body of bad aura you've picked up while you've been out. So supporting aids within this. So I've got here, these are mandalas, and people use these, or mala, we call them in Hinduism, and these are prayer beads. So most prayer beads, and then the Christian rosary consists of pearls or beads linked together by a thread. The Roman Catholic rosary is a string of beads containing 5 sets with 10 small beads. The Eastern and Oriental Orthodox have traditions of using prayer ropes called kombalashinini or metataria, and an aid to prayer for meditation. The Hindu japa mala, or we call them malabeads, which is the main common thing they're called, has 108 beads. So the figure 108 in itself has a specific significance as the energy of the sound equates to the term Om. And Om is at 108 frequencies. That's where the 108 comes. Now, also, you will also hear about adornments. When people get married, they have to have 108 adornments on them of different beads and so forth when they're getting married. There's all these things of good luck. Also, another thing is used as well is, as well as also there's another form of it, is another religious Hindu movement. It's called Gaudiya Vaisnavism. And this is, or Chantanari-Vaisnavism, and that was actually in the medieval times. And that was mainly in the region of Bengal. Then you've also got the Hare Krishna, which is, they have a mantra, a Maha mantra, which is a 16-word mantra. And then Jainism. Buddhist prayer beads also have 108 beads, but hold a completely different meaning. So again, in Buddhism, there are 108 human passions that impede enlightenment. Each bead is counted once as a person recites a mantra until the person's gone all the way around the mantra, the mala. So for example, if you had like we have Om Padma Me, which is the Buddhist thing, you go Om Padma Me, and you literally are counting the beads while you're doing that. That's how you do it. So if I counted all the 108 beads along this is how you would do it. Now, also the Muslim Misbah has 99 beads. There's also quite a variance when it comes to materials used for beads. Beads, which is what traditionally in Hinduism we use, is the seeds of the rudraksha trees, and are considered sacred by devotees of Shiva, Lord Shiva. While followers of Vishnu revere the wood that comes from the tulsi plant. And the tulsi plant is also known as holy basil. That's why it's called holy basil, because it's used as part of prayer. Now, striking the mediator, Buddhism, which has stories of enlightenment being attained through disciplines being struck by their masters. This is the Buddhist idea. Then there's using a narrative, people use that, and then some people to get to this state use psychedelics. So they use psilocybin, DMT to enhance meditative training. Now, to also understand about the origins of meditative traditions, is the history of meditation is intimately bound up with the religious context with which it is practiced. So, some of the early references to meditation, as well as Samkhya, are found in the Upanishads, it's called. This is how you pronounce it. It's a late Vedic text, I mentioned it earlier. And according to this, they have these ideas of that you do meditation. Described meditation is when it states that having been calm and collected, one perceives themselves, the self, Atman is their word of God, with oneself. Hinduism, very much so. There's many schools or styles of meditation with Hinduism. In pre-modern and traditional Hinduism, yoga and dhyana are practiced to recognize pure awareness or pure consciousness. That's actually one of the 8 limbs of yoga. Meditation is one of them. And pranayama is another. So when people say, oh, I'm doing pranayama, that's meditation, it's not. Pranayama is a separate thing. And then there's again asanas there again. So you say an asana is meditation, it's not. Asanas are a totally different leg of the 8 limbs of yoga. Again, many people make these mistakes in the Western world, but if they've done yoga training correctly, they should know this. There you go. That's another story for another day. So again, when we're talking about these different dualistic yoga schools and so forth, everyone is different. They have different ways of doing this. Patanjali's yoga status was different, and then different people have, which outlines 8 limbs, which I was talking about there, is aloneness or inner awareness. We call it kavalia. That's what we actually call it in meditation. It's origin of it in the Vedic way, or inner awareness. The first 4, known as the outer limbs, is the yamas, and niyamas, which is that the yamas are discipline and rules is niyamas. I will be sharing them as of at the end of the month of them after Halloween, so you'll get them. Sanas is physical positions. There's loads of people on YouTube do that. And then breath control, which is pranayama, which I've mentioned. The fifth withdrawal for the senses is pratyahara. And then transitions into the inner limbs, that the one-pointedness of mind is dharana. Meditation is dhyana. And finally, samadhi, or samandhi, they call it, either one. And these are sort of things we look at. So when everybody talks about the idea of meditation being Hinduism, yes, it's based in that, but most people have used a form of it, and prayer can be seen as a form of it in the Abrahamic religions. So with all of this, mantra meditation, which is the Bhagavata Purana, is the idea is a key practice for achieving liberation. And this is actually the devotional focus on Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, when we're looking at this, one of the things I teach people, and I'm going instead of going into Jainism and all the rest of it, because you can read this up anyway if you want. I could go into Buddhism, but again, it's fine. It's very similar anyway. It's just different names, that's all. One of the things I will talk about when I work with a lot of clients is actually I help people when they want to meditate. And what I do is actually help people find their own mantra. Now, finding your own mantra is quite something most Westerners don't really talk about very much, but it's really useful. So, for example, I have my own mantra, which is Suan Unajoti, which is a Sanskrit word for the inner light of ourselves. So the idea is about finding the inner light within yourself of who you are, and that's to find your direction, your purpose. Now, everyone else could have a different mantra. Different cultures have different mantras. There could be different sayings in families. And then what people can do is once they do that, is they have that mantra, which is from their ancestors, from what they use, or where they find a mantra what works. And again, same thing, go into meditation, count 108 times that mantra, and keep doing that. And hopefully within that 108 times, they get to that purpose of meditation of inner light and inner self, and then they can work with that, and that hopefully gets them ideas to do different work, different ideas of what they should do in business, in their private life, in their family, in their relationships. It is very useful things. So for me, for example, I don't always meditate in the morning. I meditate at night actually more. So I meditate before I go to bed. And if I do meditate in the morning, I do it very early in the morning, sometimes like 5-6 o'clock in the morning, but I do it sometimes 10-20 minutes, just depends. The other thing as well, when we're looking at it, is instead of this idea of everything's different and everybody does it differently, the idea is it still is the same purpose, meditation. So hopefully when people do that, like you'll hear that people, oh, well, it's Chinese. It's not. Again, I will literally say this to my dying breath. It is a Vedic tradition, and it is being used from the Vedic tradition, which I would say has been used, taken, and then adapted. That's quite likely. So anybody says Indian is not the traditions of meditation, it's Egyptian, there's no proof of meditation in Egyptology, none at all. They haven't found it in hieroglyphics, none of it. It is a Vedic tradition which has been used in India for thousands of years, and other cultures used it. Taoism, whether you talk about Buddhism, whether you talk about Jainism, they are all descendants from that because they looked at the teaching and wanted to simplify it. That's it. That's what TCM is. TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, is from the 5th century, which is that they learn about Buddhism and they learn about Ki. So instead of talking about prana energy, they talk about Ki energy. That's what it is. It's still the same principles. They've just simplified it for that culture. And people just think different things. So the effects of it, and like I said, like I was talking about the Abrahamic religion, Judaism does it. Judaism has actually done it for thousands of years too. For instance, in the Torah, the patriarch Isaac is described as going Lesorch in the field. The term understood by all commentators is some type of meditative practice. The idea of also, if we look at the Bible, we also see the idea of that could have been done with Jesus when he went to the desert 40 days, 40 nights. Christianity, they even reckon the Roman Empire by the Philo of Alexandria had written some form of spiritual exercise, including attention, which is called prosorka, and concentration. So again, meditation has been used for many years. So when Christians go, oh, meditation is evil, and it's like it's a cult. It's not. It's actually in most traditions. But I will say, as much as they say Judaism, it is always the practice has been from Vedic culture. And somehow they must have learnt that. They must have gone to these places and learnt it and brought it back. Must have done, because it clearly is very similar. Again, also people just kind of came across it, I suppose. Also, people weren't distracted by technology and television, so they could have found them things. And when we also look at it in modern spirituality, meditation has spread in the West since the late 19th century. So the late 19th century was actually first place in the West what really caught on was actually, it was originally in England, but where it really spread was in the main Parliament of Religions held in Chicago in 1893. And there was a lot of transcendence, especially European occult Christianity came into America in the 1840s and the 1880s. And that's where LA actually had a lot of that. So you find a lot of people like Krishnamurti who ended up in LA like years later, because it was where they started all that work. And then also Buddhist meditation came on and so forth. And then by the 60s, there was another surge. So actually by 1904, 1900, so forth, a lot of that stuff was banned. They banned it because they didn't like it was affecting the Christian church and so forth. But it was the 60s what really brought about. There was another surge in Western interest in meditative practices began. The rise of the communist political power in Asia led to many Asian spiritualists taking refuge in Western countries, oftentimes as refugees. And one of the people who was an English guy who really got the idea of learning Buddhism and so forth putting into the Western world was a guy called Alan Watts. Also another guy who actually used it with psychedelics was called Aldous Huxley, who wrote The Brave New World, and he actually died in the 60s in America because he suffered of arthritis. And he actually got very old and died of cancer, but he actually was very into Buddhist practices. So this is something what's all comes into it, and now we've got what we call the New Age. So since the 60s and 70s, we've now got this New Age meditation, which is involved to a range of purposes and practices. Now, that's to achieve the supreme goal of samadhi, and in the ancient yogic practice of meditation. Now, there is an issue with this, because some people are now in India, they believe that the way they've hijacked this and put it to the West is they've missed traditions. And there's a lot of traditions I've been taught as by Indians through different way of Kriya Yoga and so forth, and them ideas. It's totally different to what they teach in the West. So we have to be careful what we're learning sometimes. Like, for example, some people do meditation and they bring in certain gods or goddesses. And I'm very funny on that stuff. That's just my personal view. So if I hear that someone's in a yoga meditation or they're doing meditation in the yoga class or something, they say, we're bringing in Kali, I just would walk out. Because Kali is the bringer of war and destruction and death. I won't meditate on that. That's just me. It's not this is not from coming from like I was born a Christian or anything like that. It's just to me, I'm very wary of what energies I bring in and what energies I put out. And I think people are very much, there's this thing in the West that everybody wants to be the supreme excellent in New Age. And this is hence why there's also the problems of the spirituality of the New Age. Spirituality, I've got some videos on that, why I have some issues with gurus and cults and things. Guided meditation, which is different. See, now guided meditation is also, they now call it visualization. Visualization and meditation are two different things. It's something I'm going to go really into a bit. Guided meditation is a form of meditation which is used in a number of different techniques to achieve or enhance the meditative state. This can be used with the imagery, music and other techniques. Session could be in person or via media, comprising music or verbal instruction. The most common form of combination of meditative music, receptive meditative theory, guided imagery and so forth. Now, this is my belief. I feel that if you want to do meditation, you should do it on your own. That's what you should practice every day on your own. And when you're in a class, I think you have to be very wary of who's around you. And I would say, if you have an energy shield, is to protect yourself with an energy shield, because you don't know what people are in that class or what they're up to, what's around them. I'm not going to go into some of it because I think it would frighten some people. But I've been some classes or different places where they've done meditation, and I've seen people's energy, and I'm like, no, I'm out of here. Don't like some people's energy. And I'd rather not enhance it or encourage it, that bad energy. Some people do it in good energy, but I think most people don't. I think most people, there's always this hierarchy issue. And I'm not being arrogant about leaving these people, but there are a lot of people who are teaching a lot of things wrong. And that's probably why I've been one of these people that I don't teach meditation to groups of people. I only teach them to individuals. And I think the only reason I teach them to individuals is because they're paying clients, and then I believe that is where they'll better their work within their hypnotherapy work. So why is meditation important to hypnotherapy? Now I'm going to explain this. It's quite an interesting one most people don't talk about. See, with hypnotherapy, we have an idea. We have the conscious mind and the subconscious. When we're working in hypnotherapy, we're going into the subconscious mind. And people say, oh, we keep going to the conscious and subconscious to work with. That's not actually true. The idea is, and I've heard a couple of people say this, actually quite big for hypnotherapists as well. They say, oh, we know if you keep going to the conscious mind, you're not actually doing the work. That's absolute bullcrap. Because while we are working, we are also mainly working from our consciousness, but we always have our subconscious going at the same time. So how can people say, oh, well, if you're working from the consciousness, you're not going to help the subconscious, and if you're working from the subconscious, you can't help the consciousness? Absolute bollocks. It's interchangeable. That's how it works. So our subconscious would always tell us to protect ourselves, right? But our conscious may think, oh, so if someone consciously wants to jump out of a plane and they want to parachute, the conscious is saying, yeah, I want to do that. Subconscious is going, oh, this is like the probability, and it's working out the probability of how long you could die. Well, could the parachute not open? These are the things your body does and your brain does all the time. So with hypnotherapy, meditation is very important. In fact, before really I do any hypnotherapy sessions, I would do a brief meditation with someone to see how they can go into meditative state. Because if they can go into meditative state, then actually that's a guarantee they can go into hypnotic state. So when you'll hear people say to hypnotherapists, oh no, everybody can be hypnotized. Bollocks. Everybody can do meditation, so everybody can be hypnotized. It's about being able to do it and work out why the person can't do it. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some people could have fears, sometimes they have issues, they could have all sorts of things that you have to deal with. And then you also can do different tests to find out, well, are they under all things? So that's loads of things. But that's why meditation is very important when it's like hypnotherapy. And then also when you want to see things where you see different lifetimes, you can see past lives, or you can see future self, that could also be done by meditation. So there's ways of doing these things, and that's where hypnotherapy, as a hypnotherapist, I can help people with, because it's not just only just helping them with whatever their present problem is, it's also being able to give them a way of calming down, a way of being able to think clearly, so forth, because most people work in chaos. Most people are reactive, not proactive. So the idea of meditation is, if you know you're a very reactive person, is you need to do meditation. You need, for 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, do meditation. It will help you. Instead of being so reactive, you'll be more proactive, because you think, oh, instead of that happening, I can stop that happening. I can try and, how can I prevent this issue happening? By being organised. That's why when you actually meet a lot of yogis, real good yogis, not these crazy ones who think, the big ones who are on the circuit, actually, a lot of them are probably quite shit. It's the actual ones where they live this great life, they're like very childlike. That's the type of yogis you want to learn from, because they have a way of looking at things in a very different way. Me being a Westerner, probably I'm a little bit more, I would probably say I'm a bit more melancholic because I'm British as well. But I am also very positive when I'm with clients. A lot of people, otherwise, I do a protective shield because I don't want people around me too much. You've got to be very aware of that. And I think being in the meditative state, you can also do that while you're driving. You can go into like a meditative state, hypnotic state when you're driving somewhere. So meditation is not as difficult as people think. And I think it needs to be something we can look at and hopefully we change. And actually, it should be something everybody should do or learn to do. And as time goes on, I think meditation will become something very much introduced. They're starting to introduce it into workplaces. Again, I think that's a bit bad, because the thing is, you have all your stresses at work and then you've got to try and find your lunchtime of 10 minutes to calm down in a room. Yeah, I don't know if that really works to me personally. I think, again, if you can meditate at home and then you leave all your problems at work and then come back home and meditate. You could even meditate on the tube if you want. I mean, if you know you've got a tube journey, try and cut all the noise out, put some meditation music in. There's loads of ways you can do it. I think you've got to try and find at least some time where you can just cut out the noise of the real world. And I don't think you can do that in an office space. I don't think you can do that in a workplace, unless you work in a yoga studio, I suppose. Schools, I think, is a really good place to do it. I think it would actually, they have done studies and they've shown that it's also positive effects on emotional regulation, stress and anxiety. And knowing most students deal with a lot of stress, I've actually done this in a school, and it was allowed. It was a C of E school. They allowed me for the kids to do, because they've been doing meditation with them as an English teacher. I actually did them. They actually came in and did meditation for 5 minutes before we started the exam and explained the exams, and that actually worked for a lot of kids. It helped them calm them down a lot. So again, I still think meditation should be put into, I believe in education curriculums. I think it should be done within realms of what it is. So say if it's a Jewish school, then they have to do it with their Jewish faith, Islam, Christianity, whatever. If you're a non-religious domination school, then I think you should do it anywhere. And I actually think that's one of the things in India they're really doing. They're really pushing this idea of doing meditation and prayer and so forth. And I really encourage it. I think it's the idea of getting grounding for children, you know, because the thing is, the more they use electronics, it does create more anxiety. So meditation, I do think there's a lot of stuff for that. Biofeedback has been looked at, deeper states of mind since the 50s. And I think this altered state of consciousness, these ideas should be more explored, and hopefully, you know, it will be something where it'll be quite common. And if I have my own children, I would do the same. I would teach them meditation. If they get into anger or get into fights, then put them in a corner, instead of them standing in a corner, sitting down on a stool, actually get them into meditation, get them to know what they've done wrong and so forth. That would be probably very much a hippie type of idea, but it's something I would want to do. I think it's very important, and I think it's the idea of actually how we deal with conflict resolution. There's a lot of stuff. I think there needs to be another thing as well, is a lot of in the world there have been things called silent protests, and that's quite interesting because a lot of people are doing vocal protests against everything, but actually doing silent protests, that's quite interesting. And if people did it like in a meditative state where they're all sitting down meditating, that may change a lot of things. If we do prana healing, we actually, when we're doing our sessions, or we do like our get together, we actually have to do a thing where we put positive energy in the world towards all the people who are sick and all these things. Again, this could all be done via meditation. You know, the power of everybody's mind working together as one is a very powerful thing. And that's why I think meditation, there's always this like backlash from people trying to say it's a cult practice, where it's just not. It's actually probably one of the most fundamental ways in religion how people have actually silenced their mind and maybe connect to God. I'm not saying they do or not, and that's up to them. Yeah. So anyway, until next time, for Wellness Wednesday next week, I'll be doing connecting to your ancestors, how people do that, and then I will be talking about Halloween and all the things related to that, and then the next week I'll be talking about some of the 8 limbs of yoga, the yamas, and the niyamas. Anyway, until then,